Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. I'm confused on how to term this. Is it total double standards or what? We have a video to play for you. Can you imagine that Nancy Pelosi of all, the former Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, came out and slammed the Israeli Prime Minister, basically on national TV, and basically questioned the Israeli Prime Minister's motive in terms of peace. If actually he perceived peace to mean something, what does peace mean to the Prime Minister? But the question here is, going back to October, when a number of Israelis were massacred, which was absolutely wrong. And if you look at the recent figures, based on the data coming out from Gaza, with over 40,000 Palestinians killed, I think that is also very, very unacceptable. But again, with no peace in sight, as things move on to Lebanon and the world watches, with Nancy Pelosi coming out to slam Israeli Prime Minister, of which the same United States is supplying weapons to the country of Israel. I think this double standard is really hard to swallow. But if again your allies are coming out strong to criticize and talk about the current situation, it means there is an underlying issue going on. We will play that clip in a moment, but Nancy Pelosi was at it. She kind of used some strong language. So it's interesting to find out why Israelis allies are coming out. On one hand, they are speaking out in public. On the other hand, they are supplying weapons. So this Nancy Pelosi's double standard is something which it's a big concern for geopolitical analysts on where the United States stands with regards to its Middle East policy, on how it engages the continent of Africa and other regions around the world. Let's roll the clip and we will join you on the other side.
Speaker Pelosi, welcome back to our program.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Let me ask you first, before we get to your book, about current affairs. We've just had this terrible report about the Israeli strikes on Gaza and Lebanon. Now, as they continue their counteroffensives, we've seen an attack on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon, and we've seen over the weekend some pretty dire attacks on refugee camp, on various areas that dozens have been killed, including children. I just wonder your response to that, given America is the most important ally.
Well, the fact is that we just a few days ago observed a one-year anniversary of a terrible assault on Israel by Hamas, a terrorist group dedicated to the destruction of Israel. Sadly, since then, we've seen many casualties of non-combatants, children and families in Gaza, and now some elsewhere in the region. And it's just intolerable. We cannot, war has to be outlawed as a resolution of any conflict or disagreement. But right now, we have to live with the circumstances that we have. We've all been talking about a two-state solution for a long time for Israel and for the Palestinians. The current leader in Israel does not agree to that, even though for about 30 years, since like 93, we have been talking about that. I don't know if Netanyahu wants peace. I don't know if he's capable of peace. I don't know if he's afraid of peace, but he has gone off the course that we all thought we were in as we support Israel.
He actually came to the Congress not so long ago. What did you make of that invitation and the way he spoke against your party and your administration?
Well, it wasn't his first time to do that. He came before. The invitation was misrepresented. It wasn't bipartisan, but the speaker said it was, and so he showed up and spoke against President Obama, whose masterful, virtuoso initiative for the Iran nuclear agreement was remarkable. He came and spoke against our president and our Congress. It was terrible. was disgraceful. This speech that he made recently, I thought, was the worst presentation ever made by a leader of a country invited to speak before the Congress. I was against the invitation, but I'm not the speaker anymore. And of course, I did not attend, but I did observe what he had to say. It was most unfortunate. But we all support Israel. It is in our national interest, our security interest to do so, our values interest to do so over time. But right now, the leverage that we have given Netanyahu has been used in a way that is most destructive.
Nancy Pelosi was put on the spot and asked if the United States can use its leverage to stop the country of Israel or the weapons being sent if the U.S. have some concern. I think Nancy Pelosi struggled in that aspect where she pushed the question, but I think that she held her grounds to actually lay out that by sending weapons to Israel, again, the double standard, that it's not a license to use it the way they wanted to use it or the way they are currently using the weapons. So let's listen to what she said, because it's interesting that on one hand, the weapons are sent, and on the second hand, they are having, or on the other hand, they're having some concern. So how strange is that? So it's interesting to see how the death toll at the moment, it's sending shockwaves in several areas. So this war should end, and there should be peace in a way, one way or the other. But let's listen to what she said with regards to the question from the journalist Christian Amampour and how Nancy Pelosi addressed that particular point of the United States using its leverage. Let's roll the clip.
Would you say right now, and we speak in the context of an election that all foreign powers and leaders are watching very closely, not only yourselves in the United States, would you say right now America should be using its leverage? And if so, what is that leverage?
Well, our support for Israel has always been bipartisan, and we want it to continue to be so in the Congress, in the House and Senate, the White House, as well as among the American people. But it does not give license to so many people dying, not combatants, as I said, in the war. So we have to, again, try to strive to bring it to a two-state solution. I emphasize the word solution because I've said that to Netanyahu. It's not just a two-state situation. It's a solution, one that really works out the security, the prosperity, the freedom for the Palestinian people, as well as the security of the Israelis.
Listen, folks, another question came. Actually, I don't want to get into the U.S. politics. That's not what we do here, but we basically look at the analytical issues on what's happening. But this question was very important because it basically dives into people from a particular region. So it's important, how the speaker, the former speaker, approached this question where she basically put both perspective on the table, and from her own perspective, one of the candidates had actually enacted a policy in the past, and also what's going to happen on how they perceive the 360-degree turn all of a sudden. So it's important to know that what's happening in the Middle East has huge influence in the way people from that region who live in the United States perceive that. So let's listen to how the former speaker, Nancy Pelosi, continued to explain this really tough spot that the U.S. finds itself with regards to the Middle East policy and how she perceived the Israelis' prime minister's approach towards peace. Remember, that's the core of this video, talking about peace and how they perceive that. So, like I said, let's allow the speaker to explain from her own perspective.
And given that there's an election, are you concerned by the very, very difficult polling for Kamala Harris, particularly regarding Arab Americans, particularly in the swing state of Michigan?
Yeah. Well, it is something to be considered. When we talk about this subject, people forget. They forget a Muslim ban instituted by this president. One of the first things he did...
By President Donald Trump.
By Donald Trump, one of the first things he did in his presidency was to have a Muslim ban. Democrats flocked to their protection, and yet this is what Donald Trump did. And now, because of this situation, which again, Joe Biden has been a friend of Israel, that's for sure, but he has also been a friend of the Palestinians. And even before October 7th, when we were meeting our September 30th deadline for the budget, I was going to the Republicans and asking for humanitarian assistance for refugees. They said, we'll give you that as long as it's not used for the Palestinians. So the fact that she would be paying a price is for policies that were very pro-Palestinian is really sad. But death is sad, and that is being reflected. I'm not sure it's all spontaneous. Some of it is spontaneous, it's grassroots, it's truly that. I think some of it is motivated for other reasons.
Well, finally, Nancy Pelosi was asked to give her perspective on the current events in the Middle East, on issues happening in Lebanon, Gaza, and the general region concerning Iran and Israel's action. So she basically gave her own understanding in regards to what's going on in the region and what her concerns are. Remember, the United States of America is a very strong ally to Israel, and the issues happening in Hezbollah, Lebanon, these are major concerns. Like I've said, each time there's an escalation in that particular part of the world, it could affect a number of things. And as we all hear news media saying that Israel is preparing to strike Iran, potentially when nobody knows, a number of Israeli officials have said they will do that at their own time when they will decide. So it's important that other regions around the world are watching. What will happen to a significant increase in fuel prices, and a number of inflations will come back again. Prices become expensive, supermarkets increasing prices, a number of other areas. And again, people start paying to transport food from one continent to the other without petroleum or fuel, as you may want to call it. This can have catastrophic consequences in the global economy. So with the fact that it's happening in one part of the world does not mean that it might not affect the other part of the world. Like I have always said, that the continent of Africa should monitor events as they progress, not going back to what happened between Russia and Ukraine. It's important for the continent to safeguard things and get ready. Anything could happen. So fuel prices go up. That could also cost more expensive goods in markets around the world. And also some countries will face difficulties where things are already tough. Inflation is really high in most countries around the world. Hopefully we've informed you with regards to why some of Israel's allies are beginning to call it out and questioning the Prime Minister's motive for peace, how they perceive that things are not moving forward. And this is a huge setback in a number of geopolitical circles around the world. And Africa is observing, European Union, Chinese, and also Russians. But again, this double standard from the United States, where they, on one hand, supply weapons, and then, on the other hand, call for peace, it's a really big problem. And we've seen a number of resolutions at the United Nations where you realize that nothing is moving forward, and there is huge tension in that region. So let us know what you think, if Nancy Pelosi's outing was a double standard or she nailed it. She basically put her own points forward. It's important to hear these things from the geopolitical experts and also policymakers who have huge influence in a number of things around the world. It's important to continue to monitor this. We shall be able to talk about more of these particular global issues. How Africa could be affected with regards to this particular conflict. We're looking at it now as if it's just in the Middle East, but it could grow to actually influence the region. Thank you for watching. Watch some other informative video on our YouTube channel. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.